KZ fam, I'm back with another video, and we got Solo Leveling Season 2 Episode 3 cut content. I told y'all I wanted to watch these because it's interesting what we miss out on from the web novel and the manga. So we're gonna be checking this out. And then tomorrow we're gonna do Episode 4. And then yeah, man, thank you guys so much for all your support. I appreciate every single one of y'all. But let's get straight into this, bro.
Instead, then I guess in the end we're coming out at about even.
Alright, we start off with Chahae.
So if you want to see the full extent of Sung's power leveling in the tower dungeon, the hectic inter-guild politics going on in the background, then the expansion of the world to a more international level, stick around because we'll be covering all that and more.
Damn.
It's everything the anime left out from the novel and manhwa.
That's crazy.
Episode 15. Still a long way
Hold
to
up.
go.
Okay.
Covering chapters 56 to 61 from the manhwa and chapters 65 to 75 from the novel. To start things off right after the Red Gate, there was a whole cutscene where Miss Park was debriefing with Beck and On. She was basically describing everything she saw as best as she could remember. Things like how Sung would do push-ups in the middle of the night, all the way to his ability to use spatial magic and his conflict with Kim.
Damn.
Most importantly was his ability to control dozens of summons, but the most unbelievable thing was—
Okay, so she told Beck about everything. And me over here thinking Beck didn't know anything. So this is really important stuff, actually.
the fact that he cleared this Red Gate all by himself.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
crazy.
he did have his summons to help him, but as soldiers deriving from his very own skill set,
Yeah.
it was still technically him doing the dungeon solo. This
Exactly.
was a feat truly unfathomable, since even for an S-rank hunter like himself, Beck knew on his own all he could do was just barely solo a B-rank dungeon. It was news that all but confirmed that Sung had reawakened, and with an incredibly rare skill on top of that.
Yeah.
It was already rare for a hunter to control any summons, so to control 10s of them, well, that was, as I said, unbelievable. It was actually a skill no one thought to have even been possible. Not Beck or his extensive connection to hunters across the globe either. This then begs the question of how much money Sung is worth, which, as unthinkable as it was to consider, his value would only skyrocket the moment he was reassessed properly. That being the case, Beck knew he needed to recruit Sung before that. It was the only way to recoup their losses from the Red Gate. It was here Miss Park would express her interest in joining their efforts, since as the person who spent the most time with Sung, she believed her familiarity would prove useful. I mean, she did after all spend a week with him. She was also, by conventional standards, quite attractive, so Beck and On figured that could come into play as well. Her only request in return was to be able to be in his raid party every single time, no matter what.
Wow, that's crazy.
Her time in the Red Gate showed her just how powerless she really was. She had essentially learned the lesson that Sung was trying to teach Song Yi.
Oh,
as much as that fear made her want to run away, though, Miss Park didn't want to give up all the luxuries that came with being a B-rank hunter. The money and societal benefits were just too great to pass up, not to mention all the public recognition too. So, what better way to remove the high-risk factor making her ideal job so dangerous than to do raids with the man who could solo a Red Gate? Just as how he kept his promise to Song Yi, Miss Park wanted that same promise to be made to her. Just thinking about it made her heart flutter. So, this was how Miss Park ended up working with On, since at the end of the day, the request wasn't all that difficult. Beck would then ask On for Sung's phone number, but not for the reason that you might think. You see, where On believed Beck was going to rush things and force Sung away from the guild, he instead stated it was only to thank Sung properly. After thinking more about what Sung had done for them, Beck realized Sung didn't just save the lives of his guildmates. He had also ensured the guild's honor wasn't tarnished with a dungeon break. So, Sung had saved their public image from some very harsh criticism, and that makes sense. Beck realized just how regretful his actions were here. It was a good enough reason for On to give Beck Sung's number, but right as he was about to, he would pause because Miss Park was trying to copy it herself. Whether she succeeded or not is unknown, but it is implied that she may have gotten her hands on it.
This
brings us now to a scene with the Hunters Guild, where Choi would be now learning of the Red Gate incident himself. How did he come across such confidential information? Well, it was standard practice for every guild to have 1 or 2 informants within the association. It was by far the best way to stay ahead of the competition. Now,
Makes
I won't
sense.
dive too deep into the reaction to the peculiar information that was leaked to them, but the gist is that they knew the White Tiger Guild was hiding something. I mean, even the association knew they were as well. The only reason the association didn't probe further was because the fault of the Red Gate was solely theirs. It would be far too bold to demand information for an incident that they caused in the first place.
Yeah.
Either way, the ranks of the survivors who made it out the Red Gate made it abundantly clear that there was someone else present. Someone powerful the White Tiger Guild was trying to hide. This was a person Choi knew he needed to recruit himself, but unless he knew who that person was, Choi was unfortunately stuck. That being the case, Choi figured the best way to find out who this person was to make the situation as chaotic as possible. He would leak the Red Gate incident to the media, then force the White Tiger Guild into a situation where hiding the truth just wasn't possible anymore. A relentless bombardment from the media was sure to uncover any secrets that they were hiding. Switching over to the dungeon with Jinho now, at this point Sung was level 60. Him and his shadows could clear a C-rank dungeon in no time at all, so it was decided 4 more raids would be done today while the last 5 would be completed tomorrow. That's when their dinner would be had too, bringing an end to what Sung believed was a relationship built on pure transaction. Jinho's heartfelt spiel made it clear it wasn't, but for the longest time Sung didn't even think that he was going to get the building out of it. To him, that was just a bonus if he did.
Yeah.
The only thing that mattered during were his levels. It was after gaining them that Sung saw zero need to continue the relationship, but Jinho's confession changed that.
Wow.
The two would then bond over their conversation, all while an interesting news report would be going on in the background. It was a press conference with Beck, showing him trying his best to limit the amount of information that got out about the Red Gate. It seems Choi's plan got him right where he wanted him, and Beck was struggling to keep up with it all. The most he could do was deny any interviews to the survivors of the Red Gate. That, and keep any questions of a mystery person to a minimum.
Damn.
Moving on to the incident in America now, it turns out not a single monster was present in the A-rank dungeon Il-hwan was found in. The reason the gate emitted such high magical energy then was because Il-hwan's presence alone emitted an amount exceeding an A-rank dungeon. His aura was stronger.
Whoa, that's crazy. So you mean to tell me that his aura... Okay, bro. This guy is crazy then, if it was just his aura emitting all that magic. You know what I'm saying? Hey. He must be like a top tier S rank. You know what I'm saying? Like Jinwoo right now is probably like a low tier S rank, or like somewhere in the middle of low and mid, you know? But this guy must be high if it was just his magic emitting all that shit. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy.
Than that of the entire dungeon combined. An unprecedented level of power for any person. America's reaction to him was actually fairly standard then, since if this was a monster feigning the memories of a human, then the risk he posed was enough to endanger all of Washington. That's when dong-soo would come in to interrogate, followed by a bit of backstory behind why he's so sadistic. You see, after losing his parents in a dungeon break many years ago, all he had was his older brother. When he awakened as an S-rank sometime after, dong-soo knew this was his opportunity to get revenge. He could use his power to kill as many monsters as he wanted. This is why his glare hair is much more intense than usual, since everything aside from Il-hwan's appearance clearly indicated that he was a monster. Like, even if you set aside the fact that he came from a dungeon, the magic energy Il-hwan emitted was identical to one. It was despite all that, though, that Hwang's first question would actually be a personal one. It was likely for the sake of his brother, since what he wanted to know was if it was possible for other people to return from the dungeon. This was unfortunately a question Il-hwan could only shake his head to, since the reason he came back was very specific. He didn't explain how that was, but he did make it clear for other hunters it wouldn't be possible. Now,
the thing is, though, Il-hwan Sung, like, he was stuck in that dungeon for 10 years, no? So how did he, like, just decide to come out? You know what I'm saying? Like, couldn't he have done that way sooner?
Exactly this great calamity was, Il-hwan refused to go into specifics about it. The only thing he could say was that he alone was strong enough to stop it. It was a confident statement which would lead Hwang to ask just how strong he was. Il-hwan could only agree that he did have power, but couldn't describe more other than the fact that he had other factors working in his favor too. So, while
Other
this was
factors?
confidence which went to mildly infuriate Hwang,
Like
Il
what?
Hwan's hunter history confirmed it. His track record in the dungeons was fairly impressive despite there not being a ranking system back then.
Okay.
Looking deeper into his file revealed who Il Hwan's family was, and that led to the whole fight we saw in the anime.
Yeah.
The one thing you do need to remember though is that in the novels, Hwang hasn't yet left for Korea. That being the case, he doesn't know Sung was trapped in a red gate, and he doesn't imply Sung is dead already. What he does imply is that he's going to kill Sung, a message Il Hwan obviously didn't take too kindly. Switching back to the restaurant, Sung would notice the red gate incident was all over the news now. It was that and the identity of the mysterious person who allegedly beat it. It was pretty crazy to see how many people were trying to find information on him, but Sung honestly didn't really care anymore. If they did, then he wouldn't be as bothered as you might think. Reason being that at this—
Wait, that's actually interesting that in the manga, Hwang didn't even know that Jinwoo was in the red gate right there.
Point, he'd already reached the level he was striving for. He had only hid his abilities before to keep them from being taken advantage of. Now that he could hold his own, Sung didn't care who it was that knew about him now. Sung would then give Jinho an elixir to sober him up, part ways at the restaurant, then prep himself for his week-long adventure in the tower dungeon. Fast forward past some new scenes for sister leveling, and that's when we get to a cutscene involving him getting into the dungeon. You see, where before it was night and there weren't that many people, now it was daytime and people were everywhere. That being the case, it would be a bit weird for Sung to just open up a portal and disappear right in front of them.
Right.
So Sung would use his stealth skill, shimmy to a place a bit more discreet, bump into a few people along the way, then make his way in completely unnoticed.
That makes sense.
Something Sung had noticed himself though was that despite making physical contact with several people, not a single person noticed he was there.
That makes sense.
Stealth had made him imperceptible to even touch.
Wow.
It's from this that Sung now understood why high-level assassin hunters needed to be closely monitored, since stealth skills like this were very easily abusable. Now, it was upon re-entry into the tower dungeon that the lack of another Cerberus revealed this was a dungeon that operated a bit differently. Whereas in the instance dungeons monsters respawned, it seemed that here they didn't. So whatever this was, it was clear it was going to be something new for Sung. A fact further indicated by the hefty rewards waiting for him at the end of it. When Sung saw what could be earned from the quest alone, the plus 20 in bonus stats were enough to make the entire thing worth it. It was a heaven-sent gift he planned to put straight into intelligence, a means to solve his mana problems all at once. The undisclosed reward was sure to be good too, but any single item from the shop provided value in the billions. With items there worth hundreds of billions in gold, his measly 430,000 didn't seem like that much of a problem anymore. Of course, the requirement to earn these was gonna be tough, since 10,000 demon souls would be lengthy even with his army of 50 shadow soldiers. Fortunately,
10,000 is crazy, bro.
He'd only lost time, so in comparison to the other quests where failure meant death, this was much more lenient than those. Now, one last difference that needs to be noted is the addition of an experience counter telling him how much XP he needs to level up. The counter only existed within the dungeon itself, but it did make it easy to keep track of how fast he was leveling. It was while Sung was familiarizing himself with the dungeon that a post-interview scene would be shown with Beck. He had just finished his run with the press and was now on the receiving end of a phone call from an S-rank hunter in Japan. It was the retired Korean hunter Min. He was in Japan due to their request, specifically because they were looking for someone who participated in the Jeju raids. As for why, well, that's because an ant with wings washed up on their shore. This is where the involvement of other nations starts to become more prevalent, bringing into question how the anime is going to portray it. I mean, they've already introduced the mutated ant in the anime, so technically this whole scene isn't even needed. That said, I'd be very surprised if they cut out all the Japan stuff completely. Now, the anime skipped through quite a few of the lower floors, but to give an idea of what Sung was going through, he was extremely ecstatic since this was the most efficient level farm since the subway dungeon. Not only was he getting experience, but also plenty of item drops too. There was numerous loot that could be sold to the store for hundreds of thousands of gold apiece. Initially, he wasn't very sure where to go, but after seeing the pillar of light in the distance, Sung hopped on Tank and rode him all the way there. As for why he chose the name Tank, it was simply because the bear was as big as a tank. It was once at the pillar of light that the whole thing was revealed to be just one giant magical elevator. Sung could access any floor from it, so long as he used a permit to unlock it. It made it so whether it was the 100th or 1st floor, every floor was connected by the same pillar of light. So, these lower floors granted him levels far faster than the C-rank dungeons, since where 9 C-rank dungeons were required to gain just 1 level, only 4 hours here gained him the same. He was essentially climbing to the upper echelons of the S-rank now. How did Sung know he was at the S-rank? Well, when he met Beck, he knew right then and there that he had just barely reached the S-rank. He wouldn't have been able to brush him off like this if he hadn't. 2 days of grinding brought him to floor 27, where the demons now gave 300 XP apiece and his soul count was sitting at 2100. He was also at level 67, so to say he was satisfied with his growth would be an understatement.
Damn.
It was by now that Sung had noticed each floor was modeled after a different city too, but with the destruction getting worse the higher he got, it became increasingly difficult to recognize which city it was. Like, here on the 27th, the whole thing just looked like it had been carpet bombed. There was no day or night cycle either, so Sung could only rely on his watch to keep time. He would usually stop his grind at around 11 PM or so, this time dazing off to sleep while wishing Jinho luck with his negotiations. Both the novel and manhwa portray this conversation a bit differently, since the way Jinho's dad found out about Sung was actually through the direct testimony of a Redgate survivor. It's how Jinho found out Sung was involved in it too. After hearing all those news broadcasts regarding this mystery person, Jinho finally pieced together that that mystery person was Sung. This led Jinho to believe his negotiations were over, since after hearing the hunter describe just how powerful Sung was, there was no doubt his dad would think he cheated. His dad's reaction was actually the opposite though, since he was just happy his son went into the dungeon with a plan. It was also incredibly convenient that a man so useful to him just so happened to be in arm's reach now. All of it turned out to be a shock, especially the response in which Jinho couldn't confidently say he could recruit Sung. Unlike how in the anime he did, here he could only say that he would try. It was a response that really resonated with his dad, since there would be no meaning to the challenge if it was too easy. In the end, his dad couldn't help but smile, since the son he previously thought was just a kitten turned out to be a tiger cub after all. Never did he think Jinho would be so daring. So the smile was a rare occurrence for the man known across Korea as Poker Face, famed for never showing any emotion whatsoever.
There we
in
go.
The manhwa, an additional challenge was given to Jinho alongside this, since the guild would only be his if he could recruit Sung before his father could recruit his own S ranks.
Damn,
we already know he was going for Cha, but what we don't see is that he's also going for Min, the retired hunter who Jinho's father believes to be coming out of retirement. Since he had retired due to failing all 3 of the Jeju raid attempts before, it was more than likely that he would return for the 4th. So
that's why he retired?
Likely happening in a few months, Jinho's dad figured he might like to do so as the leader of his own guild. It made this essentially a race to see who would come first. Would Cha or Min succumb to the grand offer presented to them, or would Jinho be able to pull Sung before that? The loser gives up the guild to the winner. Switching back to the dungeon, and Sung would be at floor 50 now. He was 4,388 souls into his quest, and another 2 levels higher at 69. Though the levels were coming a bit slower now, the single day spent acquiring this was still far faster than anything he'd been doing before. A copious amount of items were dropping as well, all of which he was collecting and selling to the store immediately after. Where 3 days ago he was only at 430,000 gold, now he was sitting at 914 million. Soon he could buy whatever S-rank weapon and armor he wanted. This brings us to the fight with Vulcan, which, while for the most part was the same, a couple details need to be explained to provide better context. An attack was actually blocked by iron during Vulcan's initial assault, but the attack had shattered both his arms in the process. It was a good contrast to show how strong Sung is in comparison to his shadows, since Sung was able to tank all of Vulcan's attacks. This was with Vulcan's rage skill increasing all his stats by 50% too, so as far as powerful bosses go, this one was probably one of Sung's toughest. It just didn't
Right.
seem that way because he's leveled up so much.
Damn,
When
that's
Vulcan
crazy.
predicted Sung's attack here, it was actually a pure gamble to use Ruler's Reach in response.
Right.
Whereas the only other option was to just take the hit head on, Sung hoped Ruler's touch would absorb some of the recoil and soften the blow. It was a clever way of getting out of an otherwise undodgeable situation.
That's fire,
In the end,
bro.
it wasn't one attack that killed Vulcan, but rather a series of consecutive fatal strikes after this one. There was genuine fear in Vulcan's eyes as it happened, because the bug he'd just been hunting with excitement had now turned the tables on him. The end result was 72 souls
Oh
and
my God.
150k experience, resulting in a whole 2 levels just from that.
That's
The drops
crazy.
were exactly as we saw as well, so with the earrings giving plus 20 to strength and plus 20 to health, Sung was ecstatic at what was pretty much 8 level ups worth of stats. There was a funny cutscene right after this though, involving
Yeah.
Igris and how he's constantly collecting demon heads and presenting it to him. Sung only saw this as a minor annoyance, but the bigger annoyance was the fact that Iron was trying to copy him. Somehow when no one was looking, Iron had cut off Vulcan's head and dragged it to Sung as well.
What
It wasn't
the?
even his kill to begin with, but because Igris was doing it, Iron felt he had to do it better. Now,
That's
aside from another
insane.
cutscene where Sung tests the Orb of Avarice, that's pretty much it for this episode. So, all in all, it was quite a lot.
Wow.
Some big scenes, some small scenes, but each building the world and characters into something more. There was actually
That's
quite a bit more
interesting.
than I thought there would be. So, let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you like
All of the stuff that they, damn, bro. All of the stuff that they really cut out from the manga is kind of crazy, bro. Like, I understand they got to get through so much stuff this season, but like, sheesh, and there's quite some important things too, like Huang not knowing about him being in the Red Gate at that point. Wow, that's very, very interesting, man. These are nice, bro, because then you get to see what happens in the manga, the nice like art. It's fire, bro. It's fire. And also right there with Iron not being able to tank the Vulcan's hit and Jinwoo being able to, you know what I'm saying? That's crazy. That just makes Jinwoo like so much stronger than them. Well, it makes sense though, because Jinwoo is now S rank and his shadows are like 50% at power or something like that. But they can obviously level up his shadows, but yeah, man, this is crazy. KZ fam, I'll see y'all on the next episode. Stay positive, stay healthy, and most definitely keep that strong mentality, man. Out.